Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Very interesting analysis of the Sussman indictment that was returned by John Durham, the special counsel of indicting Michael Sussman, former Clinton campaign attorney, partner at Perkins Coie law firm. Very interesting analysis by this guy who writes at Shipwrecked Crew and Substack, who was 22 years as a federal prosecutor, 8 years as a defense attorney. And his reading the indictment, and after reading the indictment a little bit more carefully, I'm starting to move, as I have moved actually, from my initial reaction. First blush was, well, this isn't very much, indicting this Sussman guy in one count of lying to the FBI. Is that all Durham's got? And that's going to be the end of it? To saying, oh no, as Andy McCarthy indicated in responding to me on Twitter, it's coming. The big stuff is coming. And that's the same analysis as this former federal prosecutor offers, which is that the Sussman indictment reads like overt acts and furtherance of a conspiracy, because that's what it is. And we probably don't know the scope of the Durham investigation, the number of grand juries that have been impaneled. He notes, too, in the indictment that was released, in over 30 years of practice as both a federal prosecutor and defense attorney specializing in federal cases, I've never before seen anything remotely resembling the Sussman indictment in a single-count false statement case, laying out a litany of factual allegations regarding the conduct and the statements of the defendants and numerous third parties over the course of weeks or months leading up to the making of the false statement, not required to meet the threshold. He goes on to say, Durham is far too serious a career prosecutor with a very long and established record of meticulous investigation and preparation to have rolled out an indictment in this fashion if he were intending to wrap up the remainder of his work with the report to the Attorney General. He also believes that Agency 2 referenced in the indictment is the CIA. And so you may have, may have, at minimum, other federal agencies folded into this, as there should be based on the conduct we know of their principals, as well as Dem-wired law firms, not just Sussman, but Perkins Coie, the law firm, as a criminal actor in this. Maybe. For more on, before we get to Senator Braun, and this leads to one of the many questions that has been asked by me on this show, actually has been suggested, and suggested by some scholars as well, including the man who coined the term political ruling class a decade ago. Should we abolish the FBI, for starters? Well, Holman Jenkins, Wall Street Journal, is providing some credence. I'm just a Yahoo talking on the radio. Holman Jenkins, a Wall Street Journal columnist. The agency should be scrapped and something new built to replace it. One possibility is a national investigative corps that would be more directly answerable to the 93 U.S. attorneys who are charged with enforcing the law in 50 states. Should the FBI be abolished?
Well, after what they did with the Larry Nassar case, and they allegedly falsified information that came from victims, yeah. After that debacle, I think that's another reason why. And there's more Richard Jewell. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Well, yeah. How long can you have one catastrophic performance after another? The Trump matter, the Larry Nassar case, the Noor Salman case, a trumped up a failed prosecution of the innocent and abused wife of the Orlando nightclub shooter. The Stephen Hatfield case, attempt to railroad an innocent scientist over the 2001 anthrax attacks. And now they're being essentially pilloried in the movies, not just the Richard Jewell movie Clint Eastwood's offering, but also the assassination of Black Panther Fred Hampton, Judas and the Black Messiah. Well, let's put that to our friend Senator Mike Braun, Republican U.S. Senator from Indiana. Senator Braun, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be back on.
I'm glad to see some action from Durham, and perhaps it's an indicator, and a lot of the D.C. Beltway pundits are poo-pooing, the Michael Sussman indictment. Is this all they got? The Durham investigation's a big dud. And for a long time, it looked like it was going to be that way. but maybe justice delayed will not be justice denied here. And if what we understand to be true rises to the level of criminal acts from some of these agencies, yet another ignominious chapter in the history of the FBI. What about an examination of the FBI and the CIA and how they're currently organized?
Couple comments. I was listening to your comments about it. Here's my observation. When it comes to Durham, he's been slow and methodical. Disappointing that some of the stuff, especially related to where people went after Trump, didn't come to the surface in a timely manner. But if you extrapolate from here forward, I think the point is I don't know any more about it than what you guys have just discussed. There's no inside scoop on where it's going, but it tells me that there's more to come. Now, whether it will pass the threshold of completely reconstituting an FBI or trying to have it, repurposed in some fashion, I doubt that. And whether there's any major indictments, we've seen that that's been hard to get accomplished, even when we do get fairly into the weeds on this stuff. So my consolation in the fact that it's taken this long is that maybe it will be exposed in a way that there's more to come. I don't think there's been that much time spent on it with just the information we've currently got.
You sure you don't want to make news this morning and say we should abolish the FBI and work backwards from there?
Well, I think they've done a lot that really makes you scratch your head how political they may have become, not only around stuff related to Trump. January 6th, I interviewed head of the FBI when we had the fence around the Capitol up for so long, which to me was largely to kind of extend and to glorify the image by the mainstream media on what occurred there. That didn't come down, ironically, until about a week after I said, hey, do you have anything particular in terms of something happening out there from so-called right-wing folks? Nothing. And a week later, the fence came down, and thank goodness. You saw they put it up here for this past weekend, and that was kind of a dud in terms of what happened. But that's what can happen, especially when you have folks trying to stoke things.
The COVID Delta variant seems to be dropping in all states in the Midwest. And what's your feeling about President Biden's executive order requiring all federal employees, including private contractors, to get vaccinated?
So to me, that was an example of what I call the Biden administration pushed by progressives in general. Easiest way to understand how this stuff happens is I describe them, and I almost hate to use the word, as political entrepreneurs. They seize the moment. Your local legend there, Rahm Emanuel, is out there, tells you, don't let an opportunity go to waste. And look how they've used that to push an agenda way beyond public health. And, of course, that's playing out now on this $3.5 trillion spending spree. I think when it comes to that mandate, though, especially when you change the rules of lowering the definition of a small business as we had it during the CARES Act, which was 500 employees, they've lowered it to 100. That tells you how they'll push the envelope on things that they want to do in their agenda. They're faster footed than we are. They generally articulate it better. And the lesson Republicans and conservatives need to learn is when we get the reins back from all the craziness they're dispensing now, we better get better at doing what we need to do as conservatives to put our agenda into effect.
What happens here? We're on a 10-day clock here with the $4.7 trillion in funny money spending, and you've got this deal supposedly in place between Senate Democrat Socialists and House Democrat Socialists. You pass the $3.5 trillion reconciliation deal, and then you get your $1.2 trillion. And that seems to be in jeopardy at present. So is there a potential that we can avoid all of this additional $4.7
We
trillion
could have
in
avoided
funding
it
money.
all. We could have avoided it all by not having 19 Republicans complicit
Yes.
on the hard infrastructure bill when about half of that was new spending to boot. Half of it was just extending baseline spending. But when we did that, again, they tell us what they're going to do. Pelosi said those two were connected at the hip from the beginning. And then it put our fingerprint on them, and it gives them a little bit of credibility to push it, and then ask for the biggest issue that's coming up is raising the debt ceiling. And thank goodness we finally had an epiphany in our leadership that we're not going to be a party to that. And I hope they don't start horse trading with Republicans and soft conservatives to try to get us on raising the debt ceiling. That'll be the biggest piece of drama you need to pay attention to, because I think the $3.5 trillion is starting to maybe disintegrate a little bit, because Manchin and Sinema have put a lot of political capital that they won't be for the process and or the amount. I've observed that they both seem to shrink under the thumb of Chuck Schumer when it comes down to the nitty gritty. It remains to be seen. Troubles me the two Democrats are the only thing in the way of all that.
Yeah. On another matter, includes Manchin, the skinny federalizing of elections legislation. They're attempting to negotiate, the left is, with their colleague Manchin on this too. Slimmed down version, but still federalizes elections, would overturn state laws on matters like federal right to a mail ballot and late ballot requirements and so on and so forth. What is the prospect of a scaled down but still wildly problematic federalizing of elections legislation moving?
It's what bothers me about Manchin, because last week the parting email that we all read was that there's been some type of deal cooked up between Schumer and Manchin for a voting bill light, so to speak. And again, that's that kind of political entrepreneurialism that they'll do when they see they can't maybe even get their own members in line. They'll get some version of what they want. Now, that would still require shoehorning that into reconciliation with some type of fiscal attachment to it. Thank goodness a parliamentarian struck back on that when they tried it on immigration just a few days ago. So sadly, we may be more dependent on the parliamentarian than any other person to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen by trying to shoehorn it into reconciliation. And that's got a tenuous pathway forward for some of the things I just mentioned. But they will attempt it. Pelosi and Schumer and Biden have huge egg on their faces if this agenda just falls apart, especially if it's undone by some of their own.
Republican Senator from Indiana, he is Mike Braun. Senator Braun, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
A great smile can make you feel happy and confident. So when you consciously conserve your teeth, that glowing smile will show through. At bestdentalgroup.com.